have to keep exactly to that half hour,
Okay,
just
but
to
close.
kind of keep us
Okay.
in the ballpark.
So Jackie said, like, it's only the beginning, you know, the work that comes after the fire, you know, passes. And that was really true. So like I said, I was here in 2000. I'd been on the force since 1990. So when the fires came in 2000, it was like everything I'd ever worked on was burned up. So we had spent, you know, years doing environmental analysis and, you know, getting started, and the project was gone and done. So it was, you know, from a Forest Service employee, it was really, you know, very sad for me to see all this work just go up in smoke, and we had to start all over. But I was going to talk on the bear projects that we did immediately after the fires, and that's, the bear is BAER instead of grizzly bear, and it stands for Burned Area Emergency Response. And Ed is now the coordinator on the forest. And at the time, when the fires of 2000, before then, we would have bear teams that would be comprised of local specialists. And there'd be, you know, 5 or 6 of you, and you'd go out, and after a fire, and you'd go through the fire, and you'd look at the impacts of the fire and try to decide what might happen downstream of the fire. And they'd write a little report, you know, it was about this big. In 2000, we had bear specialists coming in from all over the country. A lot of people weren't familiar with our soils or our climate, and a lot of activities got proposed that never were carried on through fruition, but we did a lot of work. On the back wall there, I have a map of the Valley Phase 1 bear proposal and what we had planned to do. So you can see there's activities scattered all across the landscape. And then the size of the reports went from, you know, kind of big to really big. And it was, you know, we'd have teams of 20 people scattered across the forest. And we started the bear work on Labor Day weekend, or the Monday following Labor Day. And we started out, and there was like 20 people in the room, and we had to go where the fire was controlled. So we started down in Sula, and then we kind of just moved around the forest in various parts before the fire got controlled. And so we ended up with seven different bear reports. And I wanted to, let's see. And these assessments, we complete them in about 7 days is our time frame. So we have to have them completed, and then we request funding to do the work that we proposed. And then it comes back to us on the forest, and we try to get the work accomplished. And you can imagine, you know, with 7 different proposals to do rehabilitation across the burned area that are the size of that, there was a huge amount of work proposed. And so the forest was trying to decide how we were going to implement it. And we ended up deciding to keep the fire crews on through the fall and try to get as much done as we possibly could before the snow came. Because we knew once, you know, springtime came, we didn't know when we could get back out there and how would we have the resources to do all the work once we got there. So we kept fire crews on, and as the fires, like Jackie said, they were here through October, doing, you know, fire suppression. And we were behind them doing bear work, moving, you know, kind of following across the forest. So it was really a logistical nightmare. And the forest asked me to kind of like be the bear coordinator and be the representative between the bear teams and the forest. And we had this meeting, you know, to kind of hand the bear project off to the forest, and everybody's sitting there listening. And after the meeting, one of the people came up to me and said, you know, you're going to have to be really careful where you put these resources. Because if you're pulling a pipe and you have a fire crew up there working, what are you going to do? Because they can't get out, and the other crews can't get in. And I was just like, holy cow, how am I going to figure this all out? I am not prepared for this. And I was just, you know, I was speechless. I just kind of stared at this guy thinking, they asked the wrong person for this job. And luckily, about a minute later, the incident commander came up to me and said, don't worry, this is our job. We know just what to do. You just tell us what needs to be done, we'll figure it out. So that's what I did. And it was amazing. They were so efficient. I didn't have to worry about culverts being pulled out and no access up into areas or anything. So it was really I was really impressed with the incident command system and how it worked. So that was good. You know, and then we had these fire crews coming in. They'd run out of their 14 days. We'd shift people in, and the teams would come in and out, just like it was an active fire suppression project. And I always thought that these fire crews coming in to do bear work, they had to be, you know, really excited, because they were going to come in here and just grovel in the dirt, basically, for their 14 days and then move on. But, you know, they had were good spirited about it, and we had pretty decent fire camp for them. We ended up keeping our fire camp at the fairgrounds until the end of October, and then so they could stay in the swine barn. And they're like, yeah, I'm staying in the swine barn. So it's kind of funny. Of course, they were all cleaned out because we didn't even have the fair that year because of the fires. So we just had full access to the fairgrounds, and it worked out really well. Plenty of bathrooms, and we brought in, of course, many more porta potties to cover everything. But that worked out that way. And then we ended up keeping crews on even into snowfall, keeping people working until the very end until we possibly could. Let's see, we ended up requesting, quite a bit of money for bear funding. And I saw a memo that was dated like June of the following year of how much money we had spent. It was over $8 million so far. And we were over budget. And basically we were told we would probably have to eat that. And I don't know, I can't remember what exactly happened. But the reason we were over budget is we had kept the fire teams on. And we had tried to keep it, tried to get as much work as we get work done as we could before everybody left. Because we knew our forest with our 150 employees, there's no way we could accomplish this kind of work by ourselves. So it was quite an expensive undertaking. So I wanted to kind of describe some of the work that we did do while we were here. There was some of the work that we weeded out and didn't get accomplished, but we did, just over about 4,500 acres of log erosion barriers and straw wattle placement. And at the time, we thought that would be a pretty effective tool for reducing flow paths on the mountains and capturing sediment so it wouldn't get so much of it into the stream. And the idea was that you would, drop a tree perpendicular to the slope, key it in, and then if there was overland flow, it would trap that water and stop it, and it would, more creep around the edges of the log instead of just racing off down the hill. And you would slow the flow of the water, you would slow the erosion. And when we were first planning it, this new thing they were talking about was a straw wattle, which is like a 20-foot long tube of straw, and they were saying these work so much better than log erosion barriers. You can carry them out on the hill, you can stack them down, you can make them like little smiles so they trap the sediment in the water, and so we thought this is the way to do it. So we ordered a bunch of these straw wattles, and we had to rent a place to put them and try to keep the mice out of them. And we ended up the first day, we had these crews on this hill with a slope like this. And they've got these big cinnamon rolls of straw wattles, and they're trying to walk down this hill, and there's rocks and logs and all these dead standing trees. And then they tried to take them down the hill like it was a big snake, and they had it draped over their shoulders, and they're walking down the hill. And I was standing there looking at this going, oh my goodness, somebody's gonna break a leg here. This is really dangerous. So, after about 2 days of straw wattles, I was like, nope, no more straw wattles. We're leaving them. We're doing just log erosion barriers. Because it was I thought it would be safer, initially to do the wattles because we wouldn't be dropping trees all over the place. But after we started actually implementing it, we thought, it's much safer just to have a sawyer walk up with a tree, drop it, someone comes behind him, keys it in, and you move on. So that was one thing we learned pretty quickly. But then we had this surplus of straw wattles that plagued us for years. Because there was nobody wanted them. We'd cut them up and put them into ditches, but 20 feet goes a long way when you're putting in a ditch that's this wide. So we had thousands of wattles, and all the districts had them, and they're like, what are you going to do with these straw wattles? I don't know. And they eventually all disappeared, and I don't know if we ended up burning some of them or what happened, but straw wattles didn't work very well for what we had thought they would. And then we did 79 acres of lop and scatter, kind of reducing ground fuels around homes. We did 200 acres of aerial seeding, and we really, even before the 2000 fires, we didn't do very much seeding on the Bitterroot because we had found that mostly the natives came back on their own, and it was much more effective to do that than the aerial seed. But we did a little bit of this up in Sula Basin where it was really hot fire, and we didn't know that anything would come back in that area. And then we did 45 acres of hazard tree removal along roads, hoping that we wouldn't have people, trapped behind trees that came down. And that was a process, that continued on for several years. We'd send people in every spring, take out the hazard trees along different roads. And then we did a little bit of noxious weed spraying, only where we had NEPA from previous projects that we could do it. So it was 195 acres of that. And we had big concerns with noxious weeds coming in after the fires. The Bitterroot is knapweed heaven. It's in August, the hills are purple with beautiful knapweed flowers. And so we've been very concerned about the knapweed, and it has come in, because once the overstory was removed, it's perfect habitat for knapweed. So we tried to treat the populations and prevent them from moving on in areas that we could, but we really couldn't do very much about that across the forest. We did 300 feet of stream bank stabilization. We did 4 miles of placing large woody debris within the stream channels, cutting down the trees and placing them there, trying to dissipate stream energy, be a trap for sediment. We mulched 86 acres of land with weed seed-free straw, and we installed a flood warning system where we placed precipitation gauges at strategic spots around the forest that we could collect information from and let people know downstream if there was a flood coming. And then we did a lot of road and trail treatments. That was probably our biggest projects across the forest. We installed larger culverts at 316 locations. We removed 42 culverts and fills. We installed drainage dips on roads to reduce the erosion and the flow paths on the roads. We constructed ditches, 2.6 miles of ditches. We decompacted 6.2 miles of road surface. And then we did something that I think had not been done before with bird area emergency funding, is we recontoured 4.5 miles of road up in Laird Creek. These were old roads that had been abandoned, and the pipes were too small, or there were no pipes, and it was a really high severity burn area. So we recontoured these roads, and that was something that we hadn't done before in Bear. We hydromulched 10 acres, we armored a couple of creek crossings, and we did 100 miles of trail restoration and rehab. So that was a lot of work that we did with our $8 million, and it was pretty good. And then, so that was just the burned area stuff, and then after, that was only the beginning. The next step is the forest, of course, had a project on the forest. I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about that, because then starting in about 2001, we started an analysis to do what we call the burned area recovery project. It was a timber salvage project and then a watershed improvement project as well. And it was a pretty big project, and we were told to think big. So we looked at every single acre of burn area to see if it was suitable for harvest. And then we looked at every single road to see if it was suitable, for decommissioning or storage, or what we needed to do to upgrade that road to make it less impactful on the landscape. And the fish biologists and I were really pushing for road improvements and road decommissioning, because we wanted to try to offset anything we might, any sediment we might create by harvesting by road improvements. So we spent 13 months doing this project, and then another 2 months in negotiations to reach a settlement agreement so we could implement the project. And we ended up, actually, in the end, we had more of this work proposed, and we went ahead with the settlement agreement, but we didn't get it all done. We planted 30 of all these things that we did. We planted 33,000 acres of conifers in the uplands, and we planted those where we thought there was no seed source for the conifers to come back in, and the rest of it we just let come in natural regeneration. And then in watershed improvements, it was a pretty big project, and I figured at the time we did the analysis, I thought, I'll be dead before we ever complete this project, because it was so big. But we've done a lot of it, and there's not much left. We've got, we had a decision on BMP upgrades on 513 miles of road, and we completed 418 miles of that as of today. So then we have 34 miles that's partially completed, and that's it for the BMP. So we're pretty close to being done there. And this 34 miles is stuff, where there's a crossing up at the top of the hill or something like that, so it's pretty low priority things compared to some of the other work we're doing. And then we proposed 46 miles of road decommissioning, and we finished that in 2009. We did 94 miles of road storage, and we have 11 miles left. We added 16 miles of woody debris to streams. We planted conifers along another 4.5 miles of riparian area. We proposed to replace 37 fish culverts with fish passage pipes, and we've actually done 22. 5 were dropped because there was no fish above the culvert. 1 was removed and just left open. 2 bridges were put in, and there's only 2 left of those 22 culverts we haven't gotten done yet. And 1 is being looked at in another project right now, and the other one is in Rye Creek, and the debris flows after the fires kind of filled the pipe up, and it's currently passing fish. So we're monitoring it every year to see if we need to replace it or not. And we did salvage harvest or fuel reduction on 11,000 acres, so, and hand treatment's on 3,000 acres. So it was a pretty busy 10 years for the forest after the 2000 fires, and I guess I've talked over my share of the time, so I better be quiet. You guys, I'll answer questions like later on maybe, so let Ellen go.
My name's Alan Tressmer. I've been fighting fire since 1978 or something like that. In a lot of different places. So I've seen different kinds of fire. This was really spectacular. This was spectacular. You saw the picture of the elk in the creek. I was wearing a sheriff's deputy uniform when that was going through there. And I'm looking at this area up above me. I'm down on the road, feeling very small, okay? And I'm seeing this area ignition up there, and that's, we were closing the road about 5 minutes after that. So, big fire. Give you an idea, okay, yeah, you're in Hamilton, Darby, Sula. Darby, Sula. Here's my community. We had no fire department, no fire district. My wife and I were the only firefighters. We were running a Mercedes Unimog, okay, and when people get fires, some of the people didn't even have telephones. They'd drive to our place, say, fire, okay, and we'd get our gear and go put the fire out. So we started adding a few other people, and we called ourselves a vigilante firefighters because we were vigilant, always looking for fires, right? So a little blue joint happens, and they do an evacuation, including, my house, a lot of other houses. Up there, people don't evacuate. We don't evacuate. And you'll be interested in some comments I have about what occurred. But okay, so then we get all these other fires happening. Razor fire. My house is right there. And we're down the valley, and we're looking up on the ridge line. 700-foot flames, okay? 700, we see this itty-bitty helicopter up there with a little bucket doing nothing, okay? It really was a humbling experience. When that happens, okay, all the valley's filling with smoke. You can't see anything. They couldn't even identify where the fires were. They didn't even know that Razor was there until it really started cooking. They couldn't see it. By that time, Little Blue was pretty much done, but the Razor was starting really heating up. Now, again, new evacuation order. And of course, we had a couple other families move in with us at the time. And some of the sheriff's deputies or detectives I was working with, standing in my kitchen saying, "You're under evacuation order." And I said, "Well, we're not going to evacuate." He said, "Well, as long as you don't have any kids." There are kids running all over the place. And he says, "No, we don't have any kids here." He says, "Okay." And that's the kind of way it worked. It was very casual, and yeah, we could get away with that kind of stuff. But all these people, you see this white here, I don't know if you can see that, and along here, that's where the people are living, and those were the areas that were most impacted. Totally under evacuation order, mostly people didn't leave. So, Bob Much, I'm standing in front of my house watching these flames. I changed uniforms from a cop to a firefighter. Now I'm running an engine and actually getting paid for it in my own neighborhood. So Bob Much is standing there. His house is across the road from mine. And he says, "You really need to look into this thing they're doing down in Australia." He says, "They're doing this prepare, go early, stay and defend thing." Okay. Well, he introduces me to John Gledhill. And I later got introduced to Keith Harrop. These are our Australian fire chiefs. When you say a fire chief in Australia, you're not talking about 20 guys. I think Keith Harrop had 70,000 firefighters underneath him. So I get introduced to this concept that, wait a minute, you do your fuels mitigation. You make it so fire does not want to be there. It can't get to your house if you're removing all these fuels, ladder fuels, pruning, thinning, no contiguous fuels. Made all the sense in the world. So painted rocks, well, at the time of this fire, we had been trying to start our own fire district. It got voted down by the people. After the fires, we had Painted Rocks Fire District. And it soon was the first fire district in the United States to adopt the Prepare, Go Early, Stay and Defend program from Australia. Now I tried to introduce that program to these guys, these fire chiefs. They wanted nothing to do with it. They said the liability is too high. And it's like, wait, no, it's just the opposite. If you're teaching your people, your community, how to reduce those fuels, how to make your place safe, and thinking, go early, evacuate early, don't wait till the last moment, that's low liability. And if your place is safe enough that if you get stuck there and you have to stay there, it's safe to do so. And it makes it safer for firefighters to be there to defend your place. It's a win-win all the way around. So all these other fire districts say no. So what do we have today? We have the Ready, Set, Go program, which is identical, for one little thing, identical to the Australian program, now accepted by the International Association of Fire Chiefs and being taught throughout the country. So all kinds of weird things were happening during this fire though. So the smoke is banks down. They're waiting for this to clear up because as soon as that inversion lifts, you get the winds and then the fires start moving. They didn't know where this was going to come out. They couldn't see it very clearly at all. They do flyovers, nothing but smoke. Couldn't see where it was. So they had a line of firefighters and fire engines all along here on the property line between private property and the Forest Service. I mean, you see a yellow shirt every 500 feet. They're looking for spot fires. That was the big deal. Now back then, well, and still, teams don't like civilians doing firefighting stuff. But we don't evacuate. We know all the roads. We know the ATV trails and the game trails and everything. We can get from here to there. And they don't have time, a team coming in, they don't have time to teach all the guys, this is how you get from here to there. So we're running all over the place in ATVs. They're trying to keep the fire from crossing the river, okay, the creek right here, and the road. If they can do that, they can kind of confine this thing. Well, darn if our guys aren't picking up spot fires on the other side, all right? And talk about